presentation of this session, which is performance and user experience of touchscreen and gesture keyboards in a lab setting and in the wild. It's going to be presented by Shimon Rea from the University of St. Andrews, and the co-authors are Xiumin Zhai and Per-Ola Christensen.
Check. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. So last presentation of the first day. This is joint work between Xiumin, Per-Ola and myself. So it's performance and user experience of touchscreen and gesture keyboards in the lab setting and in the wild. So a little bit of background before we start. That is, usually touchscreen mobile devices use text entry using one of these two mainstream methods. One is the smart touch keyboard, which you land discrete taps on the mobile phone surface, and the other one is the smart gesture keyboard, where you slide your finger from one key to another, which generates a recognizable pattern, which is then made into a word. So why the word smart is because there's prediction and autocorrect involved. So these two, there's other ways of entering text on a mobile, of course, but these two are like the mainstream methods that is used by the state of the art in the modern world. So our motivation for this work. So if you assess the literature, you would see that despite the prevalence of STKs and SGKs, that is the touch keyboards and the gesture keyboards, which have been there for a while, there's a lack of in-depth studies about their text entry performance, especially outside a lab environment. How does it work in the real world outside the lab? And also empirical research has been limited in scope, size, and technology form factor. If you look at the literature, you will see like most of the text entry research or the evaluations have been based on research prototypes, which is understandable, of course. You come up with a novel text entry system, you want to evaluate it with some sort of a baseline condition, so you recruit some participants and run a few sessions, and then you publish some results. But what we are trying to do is something different. We haven't invented anything new. We are not pushing forth a novel text input system. We are evaluating the current state of the art on the current hardware in a lab setting and a wild setting. So why we do this is for the continued progress and the innovation in the text entry field. Because if you want to innovate, if you want to have continued progress, you should know how the current state of the art works. Does it work, and how well it works? So in this paper, we are empirically comparing two state-of-the-art text input systems inside the lab and outside in the real world. So, so we designed two experiments. The first of these is a traditional lab-based study. So it's a longitudinal study with a text copy transcription task. And it's within subjects with two conditions. That's the touch keyboard and the gesture keyboard, and it's balanced. And we recruited 12 participants from our university campus at St. Andrews. They were from diverse backgrounds, typically like from China, Middle East, Africa, United States, Scotland. So 4 of them were native English speakers. So basically our student population was quite diverse. And then there were Android users, iPhone users, Windows Phone users, BlackBerry users, and 2 without any smartphone experience. But they were all fluent with typing on QWERTY on a mobile setting. So that was a requirement for recruitment. And then we designed a second study which was carried out outside the lab environment. So we call this the ESM experiment because it's based on the experience sampling method. So experience sampling is like what happens when you are in an actual real setting in your day-to-day life. So that's your experience, and we sample experience at different points of the day. So if I like explain what is this exactly, what we do is we install an app on the user's mobile phone, and we let them go about and do their own tasks throughout the day. So maybe people will be attending lectures, or they will be talking to their friends, they will be cooking, they will be watching television, they will be writing or sleeping or in a moving vehicle. So basically, when you are in these settings, suddenly you get a request from somebody, like for example, you need to answer an SMS or answer an email. So that is a real text input task that you would get in the outside world. So we are trying to simulate this. So our mobile app will run in the background, and it will come to the foreground at random points of the day and ask you, okay, can you copy these 3 sentences as quickly and accurately as possible? So it's like answering an SMS in the real world, right? So we are trying to simulate real world experience and also measure the performance at these certain random times of the day. So that's basically the aim of this ESM experiment. Again, within subjects design, 2 conditions and balance. So we ran this for 4 weeks. And again, we had 12 participants for that one as well. The difference was these were all Android users, because we wanted them to use their own mobile phones instead of having a mobile phone given by us. Because you use your own mobile phone on a day-to-day basis, right? So if you are given another phone, this is not going to be very realistic. You're not going to carry two phones at the same time. And this was a different set from the first 12 participants, so it was a different set of users. The apparatus that we used, the lab study used an LG Nexus 4 device, and the ESM users used their own device. The requirement was it was above Android 4.0. And we used the Google keyboard as the standard state-of-the-art keyboard. So basically it pulled up the Google keyboard when we requested them to do things. The prediction was on and the personal dictionary was off. The reason was we didn't want one participant's result basically affecting the other participants. We developed 2 custom tools to aid with the lab study and the ESM study. And we used a subset of the Enron mobile email dataset, which was explained earlier. So we filtered the Enron dataset based on this criteria with less than 60 sentences with less than 60 characters, and it had no numbers or special symbols. So basically, they only had to type A to Z and didn't have to switch between different keyboards, because you know when you are entering text, if you have to enter numbers or special symbols, you have to flip between different keyboards, which kind of affects the whole experiment. So we filtered this specific subset. The procedure for the lab experiment, we had 10 sessions and it was 1 hour each. And in that 1 hour, users typed continuously for 10 minutes and they got a break every 2 minutes. And then these were spaced at least 4 hours apart and maximum 2 days. Now, why did we do this was we wanted to see a progression as users get experience with different the 2 conditions, so whether they had an improvement over the sessions as they were doing it progressively. And when they were switched, basically as it was a balanced thing, so when we switched the participants, we gave them training on the new method of input before they started the new condition. ESM experiment, as I explained before, we collected 10 samples at random points of the day. So we know when people are active throughout the day, so we basically, at pseudo-random intervals, like maybe hourly, the phone will vibrate, the app will come up and ask, can you transcribe these sentences as quickly and accurately as possible? And we get them to answer 4 short ESM questions, which we will show in the results part. So we collected this data. As you can see, the lab study, each participant on average entered 1,393 sentences on the touch keyboard and 1,282 on the gesture keyboard. And the ESM study was 469 and 447 on average. And there were 12 participants for each condition. So you can see like this is probably the most comprehensive empirical study with this magnitude that's been carried out on the current state of the art using current hardware. So before I go into the actual results, there's something interesting that we found, that there's a significant difference in the environment, which is quite intuitive, right? So the lab environment is significantly different from the wild. So how different is it? So we found out that in the lab, when you ask users to come to the lab and participate in your text input study, they are usually seated, you give them a seat, and they are rested, and they are fully focused on the task. So basically, either they keep their elbows rested on the table or like hold the phone in their both hands and they are fully focused, have full visual feedback of the task. But when you're out there in the wild, when you're actually doing your day-to-day stuff and when you are like answering stuff on the mobile phone, you're tired, you are distracted, you are talking to somebody else, you are not having perfect visual contact with the device, you're talking to someone and trying to type at the same time, or you're mostly on the move, right? So we basically collected this information at the sampling points from the users, and these were the subjective ratings that they entered. So I was mostly on the move. So basically, as you can see, when the request arrived to enter 3 sentences, basically users were mostly on the move. And some users actually didn't even stop. So while if they were on the move, they continued walking while typing. So they didn't even stop. And then basically, they were either busy or distracted when the request arrived, and they were either tired or exhausted. So as you can see, it's a significant difference between the lab environment and the outside environment. Now to the actual results. In the lab study, we found that the touch keyboard was significantly faster than the gesture keyboard. So in a lab setting, when the users were seated, they tapped faster than they actually could draw gestures. And in the ESM study, the gesture keyboard outperformed the touch keyboard, the tapping condition. So basically, and also we saw that as we did this over time, the users actually became faster over the session. So it was a significant result that they actually became faster in performance over the sessions. When we considered the entry rate, we found that the gesture keyboard actually had more errors in both the situations. So whether it was the lab or the outside, the gesture keyboard actually had significantly higher number of errors. It had a higher error rate in both the situations. Then we considered the user's hand posture, because I should inform here that we didn't control the hand posture. We didn't explicitly say you have to use this hand posture. We actually let the users select the hand posture and report it. So they used whatever they are comfortable with, and they reported what hand posture that they used. So hand postures were like two-thumb STK, so that you can type with two thumbs, you can type with a single finger, you can slide with a single finger, you can slide with a single thumb, right? So in the lab study, you can see that two-thumb touch typing was the fastest, and it outperformed the other ones. And then when you are out there while doing your day-to-day activities, if you are typing, the single thumb gesture keyboard was faster, closely followed by one finger gesture keyboard. So single thumb and then single finger. Moving on to error rates, again this was consistent with the previous result. The gesture keyboard related hand postures produced higher number of errors. So this, you can see here that the gesture keyboard is the red line. So basically this had higher number of errors, and in this one also this had high number of errors. So again, this is consistent with the previous result that we obtained. One thing that we noted was when we asked the users, like, what do you find? What they told us was the gesture keyboard actually doesn't support entering words that are not in the dictionary or the vocabulary of the keyboard. So what happens is, if a user tries to enter something like a name of a place or a town or a word that is not in the dictionary, you perform a gesture on the keyboard, but the word doesn't come out correct. So what you do is you try to repeatedly enter the same word about 2 or 3 times until you figure out that this is not possible. So either you go back, you backspace and you type to actually fix it, or you basically ignore the error and move on, right? But by this time, the entry rate is already affected because you have repeatedly tried to enter the same word unsuccessfully, right? So this, we wanted to actually analyze this and see what's the effect. So what we did was we first performed an analysis of all the sentences, right? With has out of vocabulary and without out of vocabulary words. And then we performed an analysis on the sentences which only had, which had out of vocabulary words. Not only, it's just basically had out of vocabulary words in the sentences. So what we found was this blue line, which is the touch keyboard, actually stayed fairly consistent. So the entry rate for touch keyboard wasn't affected as much. But the gesture keyboard, which was originally significantly faster than the touch keyboard, actually dropped so low that it wasn't significantly faster anymore. So basically what we found out was that out of vocabulary words do affect the gesture keyboard entry rate more than the touch keyboard. So again, so these user comments we collected from the users, which also are consistent with the results that we found. So I'm not going to read them all out, but to paraphrase, the positive user comments on the touch keyboard tapping was basically that you could enter anything you want. You could enter slang, abbreviations, you can change words manually, you can change the middle of a word if you like. It's faster and easier to correct errors. Of course, we know what the negatives were. The negatives are simply that you land your finger in a place that you don't want to and end up with something else. So that's basically paraphrasing the negative. You press backspace instead of L, for example. And the positives on gesture keyboard, of course, it's more enjoyable. That's what they said. And it's less exhausting than tapping. Words quickly become integrated into muscle memory so that you don't need visual feedback to type. And of course, the negative is also consistent with the results. They said the words are repeatedly mistaken, and it's difficult and time consuming to correct errors because you have already entered the gesture multiple times before going back. So as you can see, the user comments are consistent with the results that we obtained. This is a very interesting thing that we found out at the end, that we asked a question from the user, how much do you use gesture keyboard for your daily typing? So we asked this question at the beginning of the study and at the end of the study. The study was quite long. It was carried out for a period of 4 weeks. So at the beginning and the end of the study, we asked this question. So 1, if they answered 1, that means they don't use gesture keyboard for their normal day-to-day typing. 7 means they completely use gesture keyboard for their day-to-day typing. And these were the results that we got. So at the beginning of the study, there were some users who didn't use gesture keyboard at all for their everyday typing activities. But after this experiment, obviously they were exposed to this gesture keyboard technology and they embraced it. So some users answered 50%, so that means they used tap 50% of the time, gesture 50% of the time. And there were some users who didn't do it at all at the beginning, actually completely switched to using gesture keyboard because they liked it, probably. So what we can draw from that is that users with no SGK experience or gesture keyboard experience, when exposed to it, have a tendency of migrating to SGK. So which probably constitutes one of the strongest strengths in the gesture keyboard. So few limitations of the study before we conclude. We didn't control hand posture, as I said. So one of the future studies that we could conduct is actually controlling the hand posture and see how this actually makes a difference. We didn't control the ESM device type. So in the ESM study, we let the users use their own mobile phones. They were quite fairly similar. They were Galaxy S3s, S2s, S4s, Galaxy Note, and HTC. But they were quite in similar form factor, but not exactly the same device. So maybe another study could be, you could provide them with the device for use for a month or two, and then you could have it equal across the board. And we did not control or record any typing outside the experimental session. So what we collected was basically when the user got a request, we collected that information that the user entered on transcribing the faces. Because this was due to ethical considerations, we actually cannot collect what users type on the mobile phones because of ethical reasons. So finalizing, our conclusions are that we found text can be entered at 29 to 33 words per minute for touch keyboard, 28 to 39 words per minute for gesture keyboard, depending on the method and the user's experience, with these character error rates remaining. Error rates are still quite high. So even with the state of the art today, with current hardware, the error rates are still quite high, particularly with the gesture keyboard. And the future work should be directed towards reducing these errors, especially out of vocabulary errors. The other takeaway from this one is gesture keyboard and touch both have strengths, weaknesses, and they have their individual preferences. So users have preferences for both, but users tend to migrate from touch keyboard to gesture keyboard when they're exposed to it. And last but not least, the research methodology matters. So studies in the lab are important as well. Studies in the wild are also important, and they both reveal different aspects of the keyboard experience. But to have a wholesome experience, you have to use them in conjunction. So our final conclusion is that lab and wild studies are both required to assessing input technologies of current and future generations. Thank you for your attention.
I understand that there were limitations in the study, and I really wish that they were controlled, because I think doing the mobile data collection in the wild is very interesting. Did you try looking to see if you had some data points where you had the same user doing two thumbs or a thumb for gesturing and all of that in both the lab and the wild setting, and did you notice any differences?
The same user having, well, we didn't analyze it at that level. We basically, what you see here is the averages across the sessions.
Right, but that's like the first question that I would ask when looking at that data set, right? Like if you want to see what the effect of the wild is, I mean, have you tried just...
Yeah, I mean, I did go through that. Yeah, so actually there were differences, but it didn't get on the paper, but there were actually differences. It was quite interesting to see that some users, like the same user, actually had a difference in performance, as in entry rate and error rate both, when using different hand postures. And that's one of the future work that we plan to address, to control this and see how it actually affects it.
Okay, and to some extent, some of the conclusions that you had, like for instance, the thumb gesturing,
yes,
that will highly depend on the form factor, right? There are certain phones that are just too big to do one-handed, gesture typing. So how did you like?
That's actually a good question as well. It's this one was actually on the form factor of 4.7 inches which was like the Galaxy S3 and around that. So it would be interesting to see how actually like one-thumb gesturing would work on a Samsung Note, for example, which are like large ones, or maybe like a really small one. So yeah, we didn't address that in this study, but it's actually interesting to look for the future. Yeah, thanks for the suggestion. Yeah.
Hi, great talk. Anna Veit, Aalto University, Finland. If I saw it correctly, I think your performance graphs showed that in the lab study, participants were actually slower than in the wild.
Yes.
Do you have any reason for that? Was it just because they used the unfamiliar keyboard maybe, or is there anything else to attribute that to?
Well, there are a few reasons we can think about. That is, like, the first one is in the wild study they were using their own mobile phones, whereas in the lab study they were using phones that were provided by us. So obviously people are more familiar with their own phones. And the second one is the user group is slightly different. So the people who were recruited for the wild study probably on average had a faster typing speed than the low one. But what we are not actually comparing values across the two studies. What we are comparing is in that study this was faster than the other, and this study this was faster than the other, which was within the same user group with respect to that at least. So we are not ever cross-comparing any values between the two studies in the paper. So.
Hello, my name is Desiree from India, France. And yeah, so you mentioned that in the wild people use their own phone, and some use HTC and some use Samsung. Did you control the type of keyboard that you use? Like,
Yes, the requirement was they definitely have to use the Google keyboard with those settings. So that's why, like, one of the reasons that there were some phones which actually didn't support Google keyboard and didn't have a Play Store, for example, to download the Google keyboard. So we didn't recruit those participants. We basically mandated that you have to use this keyboard from the start to the duration into the study.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. So thanks to all this